I'm standing in a lawyer's office at 3 in the morning, staring at documents that prove my mother's signature was forged 2 days before she died. My hands are shaking so badly I can barely hold the papers. Gerald Finch, our family attorney, looks at me with something between pity and anger. "Your mother came to see me a week before she passed," he says. "She told me your sisters were making her sign things she didn't understand. She begged me to protect the original will." I feel like I'm going to be sick. The Astoria house, the one my mother and I painted together last summer. The stocks my grandfather left her. The savings account she'd built over 43 years working as a school librarian. All of it transferred into a trust that doesn't include my name. All of it witnessed by Diane. My sister Diane. 3 hours ago, I was asleep in Seattle. Then Gerald called, his voice tight with urgency, telling me to drive to Portland immediately and tell no one. Now I'm reading proof that my own family committed fraud, while my mother lay dying in a hospital bed, too weak to fight back. Diane filed these documents with probate court yesterday. Gerald continues. "If the judge accepts them, you lose everything. The house, the money, all of it." I think about my mother's letter, the one I found in her jewelry box after the funeral, the one I dismissed as morphine-induced paranoia. "Your sisters will try to take what's yours. Don't let them. But remember, forgiveness is harder than fighting." I'd laughed when I read it. Diane was the responsible one, the one everyone admired. Constance was quiet, harmless. They were my sisters. We'd grown up together in the same small house on S.E. Hawthorne, shared the same Sunday dinners at St. Michael's, the same fights over who got the last piece of pie. But my mother had been right. "What do I do?" I ask Gerald. He leans forward. "You fight. You challenge the documents in court. You prove your mother didn't have capacity. You get the real will upheld. And if I can't?" His silence is answer enough. I pull out my phone and scroll to Diane's number. My thumb hovers over the call button. Part of me wants to scream at her, to demand answers, to ask how she could do this to our dying mother, to me. But I don't call, because I already know what she'll say. She'll tell me Mom changed her mind, that I was never around, that I moved to Seattle and abandoned the family. She'll make herself the victim, and me the villain, just like she always does. I look at Gerald. "How long do I have?" "The hearing is in 6 weeks. 6 weeks to prove my sisters are liars. 6 weeks to fight the people I grew up with. 6 weeks to decide if I'm willing to destroy what's left of my family to get what's rightfully mine." I stand up, shoving the documents into my bag. My whole body feels numb. "I need to see the house," I say. "Which house?" "Mom's. On Hawthorne." Gerald shakes his head. "Claire, there's a for sale sign on the front lawn. Diane's already listed it." The room tilts. "She's selling it? Already?" "As of yesterday." I walk out of the office in a daze, get in my car, and drive across town. Dawn is breaking, the sky turning from black to gray. When I pull up to the house where I spent my entire childhood, I see it. The red and white Century 21 sign staked into the lawn. Diane's realtor, her phone number printed at the bottom. She's not just stealing my inheritance, she's erasing every trace of our mother before the body's even cold. I get out of the car and stand on the sidewalk, staring at the dark windows, the overgrown roses my mother planted 20 years ago, the porch where we used to sit on summer evenings eating ice cream and watching fireflies. Diane was here 3 weeks ago, crying at the funeral, accepting condolences, playing the role of devastated eldest daughter. And the whole time she already had the papers filed, the house listed, the money transferred. The whole time, she was lying. My phone buzzes. A text from Diane. "We need to talk about the estate. Can you come to the house on Saturday? Let's handle this like adults." I stare at the message. She has no idea I know. No idea Gerald called me. She thinks she's already won. I type back, "Sure, Saturday works." Then I call Gerald. "I'm fighting," I say when he answers. "I don't care how long it takes. I don't care what it costs. I'm taking them to court, and I'm getting back everything they stole." There's a pause, then, "Good. Because your mother trusted you to do this. She knew you were the only one strong enough." I hang up and sit in my car, watching the sun rise over the house where I grew up, where my mother died, where my sisters plotted to cut me out of the only thing she had left to give. This is war, and I'm done being the daughter who walks away. I still remember the exact moment I found the letter. It was tucked inside my mother's jewelry box, the one with the faded velvet lining and the broken clasp that never quite closed. Right. October 14th, 2023. A Saturday. The kind of gray Portland morning where the sky and the city blur into one endless sheet of pewter, and you can't tell if it's rain or just the air itself that's wet. My mother, Margaret Rose Brennan, had died 3 days earlier. I was alone in her bedroom on S.E. Hawthorne, sorting through her things while my sisters were downstairs with the funeral director, picking out caskets and flower arrangements. I'd volunteered to handle the personal items. Diane said I was avoiding the real decisions. Maybe I was. But someone had to go through Mom's clothes, her books, the little porcelain figurines she'd collected from every thrift store between here and Astoria. The envelope was cream-colored, sealed with red wax. My name, Claire, written in her careful cursive across the front. My hands shook as I opened it. "My dearest Claire, if you're reading this, I'm gone. I don't have much time left to write, and the nurses keep trying to take the pen away, but I need you to know something. Your sisters, Diane and Constance, they're going to try to take what's yours. I've seen it already. The way they whisper when they think I can't hear. The way they've been asking me to sign things I can't quite see anymore. Don't let them, Claire. Fight for what's right. But don't lose yourself in the fight. Forgiveness is harder than anger. I learned that too late. Don't make my mistakes. I love you. I always have. Even when I didn't show it the way I should have. Mom." I read it 3 times. Then I folded it, put it back in the envelope, and shoved it into my coat pocket. Downstairs, I could hear Diane's voice, clear, authoritative, the way it always was, directing traffic like she'd been born to run funerals. I didn't believe the letter. Not really. My mother had been on morphine for 2 weeks. Her thoughts had been scattered, her words jumbled. She'd called me Rosie once, thinking I was her own mother. She'd asked for my father, who'd been dead for 15 years. The letter was just another symptom of a mind letting go. At least, that's what I told myself. The funeral was held at St. Michael's, the small Catholic church on the east side where we'd gone as kids. I hadn't been inside in years, not since my father's service. But the smell hit me the moment I walked in. Incense and old wood and candle wax. It smelled like Sundays in 1995. Sitting between my sisters in a pew that was always too hard, counting the ceiling tiles while the priest droned on about mercy and grace. Diane sat in the front row, flanked by her husband Tom and their 2 teenage boys. She wore black, expensive black, the kind you buy at Nordstrom, not the kind you find in your closet the morning of. Her hair was perfect. Her makeup was perfect. She looked like someone who'd been preparing for this moment her entire life. Constance sat beside her, quieter, smaller somehow. She'd always been the middle child in every sense, caught between Diane's confidence and my rebellion, never quite sure where she fit. She cried through the entire service. Real tears, I think. It was hard to tell with Constance. I sat in the second row, alone. My boyfriend Nathan had offered to come, but I told him no. This was family, and family, I'd learned, was something you endured in private. The priest, a young guy I didn't recognize, with kind eyes and a slight lisp, talked about eternal rest and the comfort of knowing Mom was with God now. He said she'd been a woman of deep faith, a devoted mother, a pillar of the community. I wondered if he'd actually met her, or if Diane had just handed him a script. After the service, we gathered at the house for the reception. Diane had hired caterers. There were finger sandwiches and a cheese board and a table full of casseroles from neighbors I didn't recognize. Everyone spoke in hushed tones, like death was something you could scare away with loud noises. I stood in the corner of the living room, drinking cheap wine from a plastic cup, watching Diane work the room. She was good at this, shaking hands, accepting condolences, playing the role of the grieving eldest daughter. She'd always been good at playing roles. Constance found me around 7, when most of the guests had left. "You okay?" she asked. Her eyes were red-rimmed, her voice soft. "Yeah," I lied. "Diane wants to meet next week, to talk about the estate." I nodded. "Okay. She's already been in touch with an attorney, just to make sure everything's handled properly." Something in her tone made me look up. "What do you mean, properly?" Constance glanced over her shoulder, then back at me. "I don't know. She just said Mom's affairs were more complicated than we thought, that we needed to be careful." I thought about the letter in my pocket. "They're going to try to take what's yours." "It's fine," I said. "We'll figure it out." But even then, I felt the first cold thread of doubt winding through my chest. The days after the funeral blurred together. I went back to my apartment in Seattle, back to my job as a graphic designer for a small firm downtown, back to the routines that made grief bearable. Nathan asked if I wanted to talk about it. I said no. He asked if I wanted to come to his sister's place for Thanksgiving. I said maybe. I didn't think about the letter, not consciously, but I also didn't throw it away. 3 weeks later, on a Tuesday night, I was in bed, half asleep, when my phone rang. The screen said, "Gerald Finch." I blinked at it, disoriented. Gerald Finch was the family attorney, a thin, nervous man in his 60s who'd handled my parents' wills and property transfers for as long as I could remember. He'd been at the funeral, offering his condolences in that careful, lawyerly way that never quite felt genuine. It was 2:47 in the morning. I answered. "Claire?" His voice was tight, clipped. "I need you to come to my office, now." "What?" "It's almost 3 in the morning." "I know. I'm sorry. But this can't wait. And don't tell your sisters you're coming." My stomach dropped. "Why not?" There was a long pause. Then, "Just trust me, please." I sat up, my heart pounding. "What's going on?" "I'll explain when you get here. How soon can you be in Portland?" I looked at Nathan, still asleep beside me. I thought about the letter in my coat pocket, stuffed in the back of my closet. "They're going to try to take what's yours." "I can be there in 3 hours," I said. I drove through the night in my beat-up Honda Civic, the highway empty except for the occasional semi-truck hauling cargo south. The rain started somewhere around Longview, a steady drizzle that turned the windshield into a smeared mess of light and shadow. I kept the radio off. I didn't want music. I didn't want distraction. I wanted to think. What could possibly be urgent enough to call me in the middle of the night? What couldn't wait until morning? By the time I reached Portland, the rain had stopped, but the streets were slick and dark. I parked outside Gerald's office, a narrow brick building downtown, wedged between a coffee shop and a pawn shop, and sat in the car for a moment, trying to steady my breathing. The lights were on inside. I could see Gerald's silhouette through the frosted glass, pacing. I got out of the car, pulled my coat tighter, and walked to the door. Gerald opened it before I could knock. He looked exhausted, his tie loosened, his hair disheveled, his eyes shadowed with something I couldn't quite name. "Thank you for coming," he said quietly. He stepped aside to let me in. The office was small, cluttered with filing cabinets and stacks of legal documents. There was a pot of coffee brewing on a side table, the smell sharp and bitter. "Sit," Gerald said, gesturing to a chair. I sat. My hands were shaking. Gerald sat across from me, his fingers steepled, his expression grim. He didn't say anything for a long moment. Then he reached into a drawer and pulled out a folder, He slid it across the desk. "What is this?" I asked. "Open it." I did. Inside were documents. Legal documents, thick with legalese and signatures and notary seals. I scanned the first page, my eyes catching on familiar words. Property transfer. Margaret Rose Brennan. Astoria residence. My heart stopped. What am I looking at? Gerald leaned back in his chair, his jaw tight. 2 days before your mother died, someone filed paperwork to transfer the Astoria house out of the estate, along with several bank accounts and the stock portfolios. Everything was moved into a trust. I looked up at him. A trust? What trust? The Brennan Family Trust, established October 12th, 2023, 2 days before Mom died. Who established it? Gerald's eyes met mine. According to the paperwork, your mother. I stared at him. That's impossible. She could barely hold a pen by then. I know. Then how? The documents were witnessed by one person. He paused. Diane. The room tilted. I gripped the edge of the desk. Diane, I repeated. Yes. And Constance, named as a co-trustee. You're not mentioned anywhere. I couldn't breathe. The walls felt too close, the air too thick. This is fraud, I said. Yes, Gerald said quietly. I believe it is. I looked down at the documents again, my vision blurring. My mother's signature was at the bottom of every page, shaky, uneven, but recognizable. Why are you showing me this? I asked. Gerald leaned forward. Because 3 days ago, Diane filed these documents with the probate court. She's claiming your mother revised her will before she died. If the court accepts it, you'll be cut out entirely. I felt something cold and sharp slide down my spine. My mother left me a letter, I said. Gerald frowned. What kind of letter? I reached into my coat pocket, pulled out the envelope, and handed it to him. He read it slowly, his expression darkening. When he finished, he looked up at me. Claire, your mother came to see me a week before she died. I blinked. She did. Yes, she could barely walk. I had to help her into the office. She told me she was afraid your sisters were trying to make her sign things she didn't understand. She asked me to safeguard the original will, the real one. She made me promise not to let them change it. Tears burned in my eyes. Then why didn't you stop them? I tried, but Diane hired her own attorney. They filed the trust documents through a different firm. I didn't even know about it until yesterday. I stood up, pacing, my mind racing. So what do I do? Gerald stood too. You fight. You challenge the documents in court. You prove your mother didn't have the capacity to sign them. You get the original will upheld. And if I can't? He didn't answer. I turned to face him. What if I can't prove it? Then you lose everything. I left Gerald's office as the sun was starting to rise, casting long orange shadows across the empty streets. My hands were numb. My mind was numb. I got into my car and just sat there, staring at the steering wheel. My mother had been right, and I hadn't believed her. I thought about Diane, perfect, polished Diane, who'd always been the responsible one, the one everyone admired. I thought about Constance, quiet, uncertain Constance, who'd always followed Diane's lead. And I thought about my mother, lying in that hospital bed, too weak to fight, too tired to argue, signing papers she didn't understand because her daughters told her to. I pulled out my phone. I scrolled to Diane's number. My thumb hovered over the call button. Then I put the phone down. Not yet. I needed to think. I needed to plan. I started the car and drove toward Hawthorne, toward the house where I'd grown up, where my mother had lived and died, where everything had started to fall apart. When I pulled up, the lights were off. Diane's car wasn't in the driveway. I sat there for a long time, staring at the dark windows, the overgrown lawn, the for sale sign staked into the front yard. For sale. I got out of the car and walked up to the sign. Diane's realtor's name was printed at the bottom, along with a phone number. She was already selling the house. My house. I felt something break open inside me, something hot and sharp and unstoppable. I pulled out my phone and called Gerald. "I'm fighting," I said when he answered. "Good," he said. "I don't care how long it takes. I don't care what it costs." "Understood." I hung up and stood there in the cold morning air, my breath fogging in front of me, my mother's letter heavy in my pocket. This was war, and I wasn't going to lose. I didn't sleep that night. I drove back to Seattle in a daze, the highway blurring into a ribbon of gray asphalt and white lines. By the time I reached my apartment, the sun was fully up, and Nathan was in the kitchen making coffee. "Jesus, Claire," he said when he saw me. "Where were you?" I told him everything. He listened, his expression shifting from confusion to anger to something darker. Concern, maybe, or fear. When I finished, he set down his mug and crossed his arms. "So what are you going to do?" "Fight," I said. "What else can I do?" He looked at me for a long moment. Then he nodded. "Okay, then we fight." I loved him for that, for not asking if I was sure, for not suggesting I just let it go, for not reminding me that Diane was still my sister. He just stood beside me, steady and certain, and for the first time since the funeral, I didn't feel alone. The legal battle started slowly, then picked up speed like a freight train, with no brakes. Gerald filed a petition to challenge the trust documents, arguing that my mother lacked the mental capacity to sign them, and that Diane had exerted undue influence. We requested medical records, deposition transcripts, witness statements. We built a case piece by piece, document by document, like assembling a puzzle with half the pieces missing. Diane hired a lawyer named Marcus Holt, a slick, expensive guy with silver hair and a suit that probably cost more than my car. He was good, too good. He filed motions to dismiss, motions to strike evidence, motions to delay. He argued that my mother had been of sound mind, that she'd made her wishes clear, that I was simply a disgruntled daughter trying to overturn a lawful estate plan. The court scheduled a hearing for mid-December. In the meantime, I had to keep living. I went to work. I paid my bills. I pretended everything was normal. But every spare moment was consumed by the case. Reading depositions, meeting with Gerald, gathering evidence. Nathan tried to be supportive, but I could see the strain in his eyes. We stopped going out. We stopped talking about anything but the lawsuit. Our apartment became a war room, the dining table buried under stacks of legal documents. One night in late November, he asked if I'd thought about what would happen if I lost. I told him I wasn't going to lose. "But if you do?" "I won't." He didn't push, but I saw the doubt flicker across his face, and I hated him for it. Not because he was wrong, but because he was asking me to imagine a world where my sisters won, where they got away with it. I couldn't live in that world. The first confrontation came on a rainy Wednesday afternoon. I was at the Safeway on SE 39th, picking up groceries, trying to feel normal for 20 minutes. I turned the corner into the cereal aisle, and there she was, Diane. She saw me at the same time. For a split second, neither of us moved. Then she straightened, her jaw tightening, and pushed her cart toward me. Claire. Diane. We stood there, two women with carts full of ordinary things, milk, bread, apples, pretending we weren't about to destroy each other. "We need to talk," she said. "I don't think we do." Her eyes flashed. "This is ridiculous. You're suing your own family over money. Do you know how that looks?" I felt something hot and sharp rise in my chest. "How it looks? You forged documents. You manipulated a dying woman. You're trying to steal my inheritance. And you're worried about how it looks." "I didn't forge anything," she hissed. "Mom signed those papers willingly. She could barely hold a pen. She knew what she was doing. Did she? Or did you just shove them in front of her and tell her to sign?" Diane's face went white. "How dare you? How dare I?" My voice was rising now, drawing looks from other shoppers. You were there every day at the end, Diane. You and Constance. I was in Seattle trying to keep my job, trying to visit when I could. And you used that. You used my absence to turn her against me. She didn't need turning, Diane said coldly. You did that yourself, moving away, barely calling, acting like you were too good for this family. I wasn't too good. I was surviving. You were running. The words hit like a slap. I opened my mouth to respond, but nothing came out. Diane's expression softened, just slightly. Claire, this doesn't have to be a war. Drop the lawsuit. We'll work something out. We'll give you a share. Something fair. Fair! I laughed, bitter. What's fair, Diane? 10%? 20? You think you can buy me off with scraps? It's better than nothing. I'd rather have nothing than let you get away with this. Her face hardened again. Then you're a fool. She turned and walked away, leaving her cart in the middle of the aisle. I stood there, shaking, my hands gripping the cart handle so hard my knuckles went white. Behind me, someone whispered, "Family drama. So sad." I left the cart where it was and walked out. The deposition started in early December. First was Dr. Patel, my mother's oncologist. He testified that by early October my mother had been heavily medicated and often disoriented. He couldn't say definitively whether she'd been competent to sign legal documents, but he expressed doubt. Then came the hospice nurse, a kind woman named Lucia, who'd been with my mother during her final days. She remembered Diane being present almost constantly, often speaking for my mother, answering questions before my mother could. She remembered one afternoon when Diane had brought a notary to the house. My mother had been asleep. Diane had woken her, held her hand, guided her through the signing. Lucia hadn't thought much of it at the time. Families did all sorts of things in those final days. But now, looking back, it felt wrong. Marcus Holt tore her apart on cross-examination. He suggested she was misremembering. He pointed out she'd signed an affidavit weeks earlier, stating she hadn't witnessed anything improper. Lucia stammered, backtracked, apologized. By the time she left the stand, her testimony was worthless. Then it was Diane's turn. She sat in the deposition room in a navy blazer and pearls, her hands folded neatly on the table. She answered every question calmly, clearly, without hesitation. Yes, she'd been present when the documents were signed. Yes, she'd helped arrange the notary. No, she hadn't coerced her mother. Her mother had asked for her help. Her mother had wanted to make sure her affairs were in order. Her mother had been worried that Claire, me, would squander the inheritance. I sat across the table from her, Gerald beside me, and I wanted to scream. She was lying. I knew she was lying. But she was so good at it, so calm, so convincing, so utterly believable. When it was my turn to answer questions, Marcus Holt eviscerated me. He asked why I'd been absent during my mother's final weeks. He asked if I'd been planning to contest the will before I even knew what was in it. He asked if this was really about justice or just about money. I tried to stay calm. I tried to answer honestly, but by the end I felt like I'd been gutted. Gerald squeezed my shoulder as we left. "You did fine," he said. But I didn't believe him. Constance called me 2 days before the hearing. I almost didn't answer, but something, curiosity maybe or hope, made me pick up. "Claire." Her voice was small, tentative. "What do you want, Constance?" A long pause, then, "I need to talk to you. In person." "Why?" "Please, just meet me. Tomorrow. The coffee shop on Belmont. You know the one." I did. We'd gone there as kids, after school, ordering hot chocolates and splitting a cinnamon roll. It felt like a lifetime ago. "Fine," I said. "Tomorrow, 2 o'clock. She hung up without saying goodbye. The coffee shop was warm and crowded, full of students with laptops and couples on first dates. Constance was already there when I arrived, sitting in a corner booth, her hands wrapped around a paper cup. She looked terrible. thinner than I remembered, her face pale, her eyes red-rimmed. She looked up when I approached, and for a second, she looked like the girl I'd grown up with, uncertain, scared, desperate for someone to tell her what to do. I sat down across from her. "What do you want?" She stared into her coffee. "I'm sorry." I blinked. "What?" "I'm sorry." Her voice cracked. For all of it. For what Diane did. For what I helped her do. My heart was pounding. "You're admitting it?" She nodded, tears spilling down her cheeks. "I didn't want to. I swear, Claire, I didn't. But Diane, she said it was what Mom wanted. She said Mom was worried you'd blow through the money, that you didn't understand how to manage an estate. She made it sound like we were protecting you." "Protecting me? By cutting me out?" "I know." She wiped her face. "I know it was wrong. I knew it then. But I didn't know how to say no to her. I never have." I sat back, my mind racing. "Why are you telling me this now?" She looked up, her eyes desperate. "Because I can't live with it anymore. Because every time I close my eyes, I see Mom's face when Diane made her sign those papers. She was so tired, Claire. She didn't even understand what she was signing. And I just stood there. I felt something twist in my chest. Anger and pity and grief all tangled together. "What do you want me to do with this?" I asked quietly. "I'll testify," she said. "At the hearing. I'll tell the judge everything. I'll tell them what really happened." I stared at her. "You'd do that? You'd go against Diane?" "I have to." She reached across the table, her hand trembling. "Please, Claire, let me make this right." I looked at her. My sister, broken and desperate, asking for redemption. And I thought about my mother's letter. Forgiveness is harder than anger. I took her hand. "Okay," I said. "Okay." The hearing was held on a Friday morning in mid-December. The courthouse was old, with high ceilings and wooden benches that creaked when you moved. I sat beside Gerald, my hands clenched in my lap, trying to breathe. Diane sat across the aisle with Marcus Holt, looking composed and confident. She didn't look at me. Constance sat in the back, alone. The judge, a stern woman in her 60s named Judge Carolyn Reeves, called the court to order. Marcus Holt went first, presenting his case with practiced ease. He argued that the trust documents were legal, properly executed, and reflected my mother's true wishes. He called Diane to the stand. She testified clearly, confidently, repeating the same story she'd told in the deposition. Then Gerald called Constance. The courtroom went silent. Diane's head snapped around. Marcus Holt half rose from his seat, then sat back down, his jaw tight. Constance walked to the stand, her hands shaking. She was sworn in. She sat down. Gerald approached. "Ms. Brennan, can you tell the court what you witnessed on October 12th, 2023? Constance's voice was barely a whisper. "My sister Diane brought a notary to our mother's house. Mom was in bed. She'd been sleeping most of the day. Diane woke her up and told her she needed to sign some papers. Did your mother understand what she was signing?" Constance's eyes filled with tears. "No. She asked what they were. Diane told her it was just paperwork. Mom said she was tired. Diane told her it would only take a minute." "And did she sign?" "Yes." Diane held her hand, guided the pen. The courtroom erupted. Marcus Holt was on his feet, objecting. Diane was staring at Constance, her face white with fury. Judge Reeves banged her gavel. "Order!" Gerald pressed on. "Ms. Brennan, why didn't you speak up at the time?" Constance wiped her eyes. "Because I was scared. Because Diane said it was what Mom wanted. Because I didn't want to believe we were doing something wrong. And now I know we were." The judge ruled from the bench. The trust documents were voided. The original will was upheld. I got the house. I got the inheritance. I got everything my mother had meant for me to have. I should have felt victorious. But when I walked out of that courtroom and saw Diane sitting on a bench in the hallway, her head in her hands. I just felt empty. Constance was gone. She'd left as soon as she'd finished testifying. I stood there for a long moment, watching Diane cry. Really cry. Not the composed, controlled tears she'd shown at the funeral, but deep, shaking sobs that made her shoulders heave. I thought about walking past her. I thought about saying nothing, but instead I sat down beside her. She looked up, her face streaked with tears and mascara. "What do you want? To gloat?" "No." We sat in silence. Finally, she spoke. "I thought I was doing the right thing. I know. I thought you didn't care, that you'd moved on, that the house, the money, it didn't matter to you. It mattered. I know that now." She wiped her face. "I'm sorry, Claire. I'm so sorry." I looked at her. My sister, broken and ashamed. And I thought about my mother's letter, about forgiveness, about choosing something harder than anger. "I'm not pressing charges," I said. She blinked. "What?" "For the fraud. I could. Gerald thinks I should, but I'm not." "Why?" I stood up. "Because you're my sister, and because holding on to this will kill me." I walked away, leaving her sitting there, and I didn't look back. The weeks after the hearing were strange, quiet, like the world had exhaled and forgotten to breathe back in. I won. The judge's ruling was final. The house in Astoria was mine. The bank accounts, the stocks, the modest savings my mother had accumulated over 43 years of working as a school librarian, all of it, mine. Gerald handled the paperwork with his usual efficiency, and by mid-January, the estate was settled. I should have felt relief, vindication, something. Instead, I felt hollow. Nathan noticed first. We were sitting in the apartment one evening, takeout containers scattered across the coffee table, some action movie playing on mute in the background. He'd been trying to get me to talk about the case for weeks, but I kept deflecting. Finally, he paused the movie and turned to face me. "Claire, are you okay?" "I'm fine." "You're not fine. You've barely eaten. You don't sleep. You won the case. You got everything you wanted. So why do you look like you lost?" I stared at the screen, frozen on a scene of a car mid-explosion. "Because I did lose, just not the way you think." "What does that mean?" I turned to him. "It means I got the house, Nathan. I got the money. But I lost my sisters. I lost my family. And I don't know if that was a fair trade." He reached for my hand. "They made their choice." "I know. But so did I." I pulled my hand away. I could have walked away. I could have let it go. But I didn't. I chose to fight. And now we'll never speak again. Diane hates me. Constance is. I don't even know where Constance is. And my mother's dead, so I can't even ask her if this is what she wanted. Nathan was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, "Your mother told you to fight. She also told me to forgive. You did forgive. You didn't press charges." "That's not forgiveness, Nathan. That's just not making things worse." He didn't have an answer for that. Neither did I. In early February, I drove to Astoria to see the house. I hadn't been back since the funeral. The realtor's sign was gone, the lawn overgrown with weeds and winter grass. The paint on the front porch was peeling, and one of the shutters hung crooked, barely attached. It looked abandoned, forgotten. I sat in the car for a long time staring at the house where I'd spent every summer as a kid. My mother had bought it with money from my grandfather's life insurance policy. A small, drafty place with warped floors and windows that rattled in the wind. But she'd loved it. She'd spent decades fixing it up, painting the walls, planting roses in the front yard, turning it into something worth keeping. And now it was mine. I got out of the car and walked to the front door. The key Gerald had given me stuck in the lock, but after some jiggling, it turned. The door swung open with a creak. Inside, the air was cold and stale. Dust covered every surface. The furniture was still there. The old floral couch, the wooden rocking chair my grandfather had made, the bookshelf crammed with paperbacks and photo albums. It looked like my mother had just stepped out and would be back any minute. But she wouldn't. I walked through the room slowly, my footsteps echoing on the hardwood floors. The kitchen still smelled faintly of her, lavender and lemon cleaner. Her coffee mug was in the sink, unwashed. A calendar on the wall was still turned to October 2023. In the bedroom, the bed was made, the pillows fluffed, the quilt, hand-stitched by my grandmother, folded neatly at the foot. On the nightstand was a photo of the three of us, me, Diane, and Constance, taken at some long-ago Christmas. We were young, maybe 10, 12, and 14, wearing matching red sweaters and gap-toothed smiles. My mother had insisted on the photo. She'd wanted to remember us like that, happy, together, before everything got complicated. I picked up the photo and stared at it for a long time. Then I set it down, walked to the closet and started packing. It took me 3 days to sort through everything. Clothes went to Goodwill. Books went to the local library. Dishes, furniture, linens. I kept some, donated the rest. I worked methodically, room by room, trying not to think too hard about what I was doing. On the 3rd day, I found a box in the back of the closet. It was labeled Claire, in my mother's handwriting. I sat down on the floor and opened it. Inside were things I'd forgotten existed. My high school yearbooks, a stuffed rabbit I'd carried everywhere as a kid, a Valentine's Day card I'd made for her in 2nd grade, construction paper and glitter glue. And at the bottom, wrapped in tissue paper, was a small wooden cross. I recognized it immediately. It had hung on the wall of the chapel at St. Michael's, the one we'd attended every Sunday. When the church renovated a few years ago, they'd replaced it with something newer, and my mother had asked if she could keep the old one. The priest had said yes. She'd kept it all this time. I held it in my hands, tracing the grain of the wood with my thumb. It was simple, unadorned, the kind of thing you'd pass by without noticing. But my mother had loved it. She'd told me once that it reminded her that some things were worth holding on to, even when they were old and worn, and nobody else wanted them. I thought about the letter. Forgiveness is harder than anger. I thought about Diane, sitting in that courthouse hallway, broken and sobbing. I thought about Constance, testifying, her voice shaking with fear and guilt. And I thought about myself, standing in this empty house, holding a cross, wondering what the hell I was supposed to do now. I called Constance that night. It rang 4 times before she answered. Her voice was cautious. "Claire? Yeah, it's me." A pause. "Why are you calling?" "I don't know." I sat on the porch steps, the phone pressed to my ear, staring out at the dark ocean. "I guess I just wanted to hear your voice." She didn't say anything. "I'm at the house," I continued. "In Astoria. I've been packing up Mom's things." "Oh." Her voice was soft, sad. "How is it?" "Hard." "Yeah." We were quiet for a moment. Then I said, "I found a box. Mom had saved some of my things. Old school stuff, photos, a cross from the church. She kept things for all of us." Constance said, "Diane's are in the attic, mine too." "I didn't know that." "She never threw anything away. She said it was important to remember where we came from." I felt my throat tighten. "I miss her, Constance." Her voice cracked. "Me too." "I'm sorry," I said, "for everything. For the lawsuit, for dragging you into court, for—" "Don't," she cut me off. "Don't apologize. You were right. What we did was wrong. I knew it was wrong, and I did it anyway. You had every right to fight." "But I didn't have to fight so hard." "Yes, you did. Because if you hadn't, Diane and I would have gotten away with it. And we would have spent the rest of our lives lying to ourselves about why." I closed my eyes. "Do you think Mom would be proud of me? Or disappointed?" Constance was quiet for a long time. Then she said, "I think she'd be proud that you stood up for yourself. And I think she'd be sad that it cost you your family. I haven't lost you, haven't you?" I opened my mouth to argue, but the words wouldn't come. "I don't know if Diane will ever forgive you," Constance continued. I don't know if I have the right to forgive you, or if you even need it. But I know this. You did what you had to do, and I'm sorry I made you do it alone. Tears were streaming down my face now. I don't want to lose you, Constance. You haven't. I'm right here. Are you? I'm trying to be. It wasn't much, but it was something. I stayed in Astoria for 2 more weeks, finishing the work on the house. I patched the porch, fixed the shutter, repainted the front door, a soft blue, my mother's favorite color. I planted new roses in the front yard, even though it was too early in the season, and they probably wouldn't take. I didn't care. It felt like something I needed to do. Nathan came down for a weekend to help. We worked in companionable silence, sanding and painting and hauling trash to the dump. On Saturday night, we sat on the porch with beers, watching the sun set over the ocean. What are you going to do with the place? He asked. I don't know. Rent it, maybe. Or sell it. You could keep it. Come down on weekends. Maybe. He looked at me. You don't sound sure. I'm not. I took a sip of beer. This house was my mother's dream, not mine. And every time I'm here, all I can think about is what I lost to keep it. You didn't lose anything, Claire. They took it from you, and you took it back. That's not how it feels. Nathan was quiet. Then he said, Do you regret it? Fighting for the house? I thought about it. Really thought about it. No, I said finally. I don't regret fighting. I just wish I didn't have to. That's life, though. Sometimes the right thing costs more than you want to pay. I looked at him. When did you get so wise? He grinned. I've always been wise. You just weren't paying attention. I laughed, really laughed, for the first time in months. And for a moment, sitting there on the porch with the ocean breeze in my hair and Nathan beside me, I felt something close to peace. In late February, I got a letter. It came to my Seattle apartment, addressed in handwriting I didn't recognize. Inside was a single sheet of paper. Claire, I don't expect you to read this. I don't expect you to respond. But I need to say it anyway. I was wrong. Not just about the estate, but about everything. I spent so many years thinking I was the responsible one. The one who held the family together. The one who did what needed to be done. And I used that to justify things I shouldn't have. I convinced myself that you didn't care. That you'd moved on. That you wouldn't miss what you didn't know you'd lost. But I was lying. To you and to myself. Mom loved you, Claire. She loved all of us. And she trusted me to take care of you and Constance after she was gone. I failed her. I failed you. And I don't know how to make that right. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I don't deserve it. But I want you to know that I'm sorry. And that I think about you every day. And that if there's ever a time when you're ready to talk, really talk, I'll be here. Your sister, Diane. I read the letter 3 times. Then I folded it, put it in a drawer, and didn't answer. Not because I didn't want to, but because I wasn't ready. Not yet. Spring came slowly to Portland. The rain eased, the trees bloomed. The city shook off winter like an old coat. I sold the house in Astoria in early April. Not because I didn't love it, but because I realized Nathan was right. It was my mother's dream, not mine. And holding on to it felt like trying to hold on to her. And I couldn't do that anymore. I donated most of the money to the library where my mother had worked for 20 years. They used it to create a reading program for kids, something she would have loved. The rest I put into savings. I didn't need it. I didn't want it. But it was mine, and I'd fought for it. And that had to mean something. On the first anniversary of my mother's death, I went to St. Michael's. I hadn't been inside since the funeral. I didn't go to Mass. I wasn't sure I believed in that anymore, if I ever really had. But I sat in the back pew, staring at the stained glass windows, the rows of candles flickering in red glass holders, the cross hanging above the altar. I thought about my mother, about the letter she'd left me, about the warning and the plea. fight for what's right, but don't lose yourself in the fight. I'd done both. And now I was here, alone in a church I didn't believe in, trying to figure out if any of it had been worth it. I lit a candle. For my mother, for my sisters, for myself, and then I left. In May, Constance called. "Diane wants to meet," she said. "The three of us, just to talk." My first instinct was to say no, but something in Constance's voice, hope, maybe, or desperation, made me pause. "Where?" I asked. "Mom's grave, Saturday morning." I closed my eyes. "Okay, I'll be there." I arrived early before the sun was fully up. The cemetery was quiet, the grass still wet with dew. My mother's grave was near the back, under a sprawling oak tree. The headstone was simple. Margaret Rose Brennan, 1958, 2023. Beloved mother. I stood there for a long time staring at the stone, trying to think of something to say. But the words wouldn't come. Footsteps behind me. I turned. Diane and Constance were walking up the path together. Diane looked older, thinner, more worn. Constance looked nervous. We stood in a line, the three of us, staring at the grave. For a long time, no one spoke. Then Diane said, "I don't know how to do this." "Neither do I said. "Me neither," Constance added. We were quiet again. Then Diane turned to me. "I read Mom's letter, the one she left you." I blinked. "How?" "Constance showed me." She took a shaky breath. "She was right about everything, and I'm sorry, Claire. I'm so sorry." "I know. Do you forgive me?" I looked at her. My sister, broken and desperate, asking for something I wasn't sure I could give. "I don't know," I said honestly. "I want to, but I don't know how yet." She nodded, tears streaming down her face. "That's fair." Constance reached out, taking both our hands. "Maybe we don't have to figure it out today. Maybe we just start." I looked at her, then at Diane, then down at the grave. My mother's words echoed in my mind. Forgiveness is harder than anger. She was right, but maybe it was also the only way forward. "Okay," I said. "Let's start." We didn't fix everything that day. We didn't hug or cry or promise to be best friends again. We just stood there, the three of us, and talked about Mom, about the house, about the things we'd said and done and couldn't take back. It was a beginning. Small, fragile, uncertain, but it was something. As I drove back to Seattle that afternoon, I thought about the wooden cross I'd found in my mother's closet. I'd kept it, hung it on the wall of my apartment. It didn't mean I'd found faith again, but it meant I was trying to let go of the anger, trying to hold on to what mattered, trying to believe that forgiveness, real forgiveness, was possible. My mother had been right about a lot of things. Maybe she was right about that too. My mother left a letter before she passed away saying that my sisters would try to steal my share of the inheritance. I just ignored it. Until, in the middle of the night, I got a phone call. But I never imagined that.